Welcome to the program on Silk Route. In the last lecture, we discussed certain facts about the Silk Route, its origin and its development. Today, we are going to take up a very important and fundamental question. Should we suppose then that this highway or this transcontinental route, or the route which medieval chroniclers used to name as Shahrai Buzarg or Shahrai Abresham, was exclusively meant for the trade of the silk alone. No, we should remember that many other provisions and many other substances which were produced in other parts of the world, but which were connected with the main highway, they also formed a part of the commodity structure on the Silk Route. I should say that in medieval Central Asia or medieval Eurasia, I should say that every locality was specialized in a particular on a specific brand of production. And for instance, one area produced gold, another area produced horses which were called as horses of the heaven. Therefore, on account of the specialized nature of the products, we should say that many smaller routes were connected with the main route. For instance, one of the routes was called as Jade route, another was called as Emerald route, another was called as Fool, Felt and Sable route, another was called as Horse route, sometimes another route was called as the Camel route, and sometimes other routes were called as the Gold and Silver routes, which presupposes that the main highway was connected with a number of the routes, and it was as such connected with a number of the republics, and it was as such connected with a number of countries belonging to the different civilizations on the peripheries of Central Asia itself. These routes had also the supplements, like it was not only the horse, the slaves, the corn, the cloths, but there were also the specimen of the furnitures and the furnishing. There were also the specimens of the vegetables. These were also traded in along the same route. Soap and even ordinary small things like soap, mirrors, buttons, hats, and other consumer goods also formed a part of this the commodity structure on this very route. Another relevant question related to this commodity structure: who did manage it? What was the composition of the trading community? Were they purely the natives, or they were the foreigners as well? Let me say here that it was not a heterogeneous group, because it comprised both of the natives as well as the foreigners. Then within this group were also smaller groups, and those were also heterogeneous in character, in composition, in orientation, and they belonged to the different parts of the world. Like we had the Russians, the Arabs, the Indians, the Egyptians, Romans, Turks, Persians, Jews, Greeks, Armenians, and many others. By this you can understand that it was not a simple highway, because large number of the entrepreneurs and large number of the traders and the merchants who were well established in their own native countries, but they had in those times invested considerably and adequately for earning the commercial benefits, for earning the trade benefits out of the sale of the silk from China to Rome, and which alone did not comprise of, again I should reiterate saying that silk, but it was supplemented by many other items like spices and scents as well, besides those which I mentioned before. And from within itself, we should say that the people, the traders and the merchants of Khotan, Yarkand, Kashgar, Khojand, Khokand, Samarkand, Bukhara, and not to a great surprise to the viewers that Kashmiris, the Sindhis, the Multanis, the people from Saharanpur, the people from Shikarpur, from Amritsar during the later years, I mean towards the 19th and the 20th century, they were also involved in conducting this inter and intra-regional trade in Central Asia. And these traders and merchants, they were both the settled as well as the traveling merchants. Those people who would operate from their native places, they were called as the settled persons, or those people who would migrate from their native places and go down to the foreign lands, but they would settle there and operate from there. They would be called as the settled merchants. But those who were the moving traders and the merchants, they were called as the traveling group of the merchants. All the times they would, travel along with the caravans, which I made reference to earlier also, a group of the traders and the merchants, for the reasons because these caravans and these groups of the traders and merchants were exposed to the threat of the pirates sometimes. They were exposed to the natural calamities. They were exposed to the threats of the abnormal weather conditions on account of untimely rains and untimely snow on the roads. And sometimes it was because of the inflammation of the great rivers, which sometimes they had to cross, and they had to pass over while carrying their loaded horses and camels, and sometimes the pack ponies along with. Therefore, all the times they would prefer to have their trade in the groups and in the caravans. And we should try to remember that in the medieval setup, in the trade and the commerce all over the world, particularly in South Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, in Eurasian continent also, we should understand and remember that this caravan trade was quite significant, as there were no swift means of transportation like we have the railway and we have the vehicular traffic nowadays. But then there were no such type of the facilities. It was simply that the goods were carried on the wheeled carts, and the motive force to the wheeled carts was always provided either by the horses or by the camels, or sometimes the human labor was employed to drag the wheeled carts for onward journey to the destination of the consumption centers in whatever part of the Eurasia, in whatever part of the South Asia or Central Asia. All the times whenever these caravans started, the group of the traders and the merchants would be very, very small in terms of the number of the humans accompanying it, in terms of the number of the pack animals accompanying it. But as it would move onwards, it would be joined by other type of the smaller traders and the merchants. And with the passage of time, as would proceed towards the final destination, these caravans and the kafilas would swell, both in composition and in organization. And once they would reach to a particular place, be it the final destination or on the midway itself, their presence at that time would make a situation that was quite appealing and interesting because of the arrival of the villagers from the nearby and far off places to notice their presence and also to notice the variety of the commodities they would deal in, and also to enter into a kind of exchange-based relationship. While they would exchange with them the corn and the grains, they would take away the other items of the consumer items for daily routine in their domestic purpose. And another very, very important contribution of these caravans was that a large number of the settlements, the towns and the cities came into being. And we should remember that when there are no men, when there are no humans, there is no settlement. But once the humans come, automatically the settlements come into being. So if we find out in this entire region a cluster of the settlements and the towns growing and developing, it is all because of the contribution of the Silk Route and the caravans that have been playing across the region from China to Rome from different times, from early BCs down to the 19th century itself, though it is often said that the Silk Road declined in the 16th century. But my personal observation is that the trade along the route continued even up to the 19th and the 20th century, when Russia and England were locked horns with each other on the imperial rivalry and for the occupation of the new lands for the purpose of marketing and the obtaining the raw supplies for their industrial setups in their respective countries. And another thing is that if we find out the celebrated centers like Samarkand, Bukhara, Nishapur, Marw, Khojand, Kokand, or for that matter Jalalabad and Yarkand, Kashgar, or other cities or the towns, we should try to understand that in their evolution and in their growth and development, the contribution of the Silk Route has been quite unprecedented. Another very interesting question, most pertinent question, is that what has been the role of the state? How did the state behave? Did it really extend patronage to the survival and the sustenance of the Silk Road, or was it averse to it? Although we know that the region was quite marked because it registered and experienced the rule of the great dynasties, which included the rule of Changiz, which included the rule of Ugedi, his son, Kublai Khan, and Timur also, and also it experienced the rule of the Kara Khanids. It also experienced the rule of the turbulent nomadic tribes of the Huns and the Kushans also. But at the same time, by and large, when we scan the pages of history, we reach to this conclusion that wars apart, they would go on fighting with each other for the occupation of the grasslands, or they imposing their tribal or the nomadic superiority on one another. But at the same time, all the time their effort and their endeavor was that it should not affect, that these wars should not affect the sustenance and the survival, and it should not cause any sort of disruption in the free and the smooth movement of the caravans or the movement of the travelers and the merchants across the route. And to that effect, right from the beginning of the civilization in this region, coming from the Kushans, going down to the Uyghurs, Kara Khanids, Kara Khatais, and Arabs, Khawarizm Shahs, Ghaznavids, Uzbeks, Uyghurs, many others. All the times, therefore, their effort have been their effort has been to extend every possible patronage and every possible support to the Silk Route and those who would pass through the same. And in fact, they provided every possible support by constructing what we called as the caravanserais. These were the sarais, or the mud structure or the stone structured houses where each and every provision or thing or item was made available to the travelers and merchants so that they should feel comfortable, because we should understand that these caravanserais were not alone situated or located in the developed cities and towns. They were also sometimes situated and located in the steppe lands and quite formidable and severe deserts. Therefore, whether it was Changiz Khan, who otherwise was quite infamous for unleashing a reign of terror in the history of human civilization, but at the same time, so far as this part of the Silk Road and the extension of support and patronage is concerned, and his contribution has been quite remarkable and it has been quite unprecedented. And we have the historical accounts in Tarikh-e-Chagatai, where we find out that Changiz Khan provided every possible support and patronage to the travelers and merchants, and every settlement at every place, at every stage, he issued the orders for the construction construction of the rest houses for those people. And mind it that these rest houses were always accompanied by the bathrooms, the smart type of the shops. These were also accompanied by the libraries, and also sometimes by the places of worship. When these were the days of Buddhism, these were the viharas which were constructed. When it was the time of the Nestorian Christianity, we find out that the churches were constructed. And when it was the time of Islam, they constructed the mosques, they constructed and similar other types of the structures for the worship of the common people as well as the travelers and the merchants. And mind it also that they would also try to give them every possible protection in order to give them respite and relief as and when they were stuck up in these places, in these caravan sarayas, as and when they would come to know that roads are damaged, they are not in a good condition because of unfair weather, or sometimes they would feel that the wars are going on the way, they would be held up there, or sometimes it would be natural calamities would also be a source of great inconvenience to them. But the medieval rulers and the ancient rulers, regardless of their nature of the state, they would ensure that these travelers and merchants have a respite and a relief, so that their trade onwards to the final destination is not blocked or it is not interrupted, because it was not simply an interruption to the trade, but it was also a great inconvenience to those who were just waiting for these caravans for want of the little morsel of food, for the clothes, for the spices, for the scents, or whatever the provisions we usually require in our daily life. So another aspect of it is interruption was that if it was interrupted, it would mean a lot of revenue loss to the respective status. So therefore, with these economic considerations, with the human considerations as well, the role of the medieval state has been by and large quite positive, and in the trade of these variegated substances and variegated products, which included silk, followed by many other items. So to wind up all, we should say that Silk Route has had a historical background starting from 3000 years before present, and it was named after silk which was produced in China, but it was in great demand and it was exported to the great empires, to the great civilizations of the world. And in there, and it is a transaction, the caravans which comprised mostly the settled traders and the merchants, and also the traveling merchants, they played a tremendous role in ensuring the supply of the products from the producing areas to the consuming areas. And the Silk Route's significance was also that it also played the role of vibrant economic mediator, as well as the vibrant cultural transmitter to the other countries, because it was always on the receiving end. It would receive from the neighboring civilizations certain cultural traits, and it would pass on the same to the other neighboring civilizations. And in that, we should understand and we should know that it accepted Buddhism from India, and it onwards transmitted to China, to Southeast Asia and other countries of the world. And also it had a role that it accepted Islam from Arabia, which reached then to Iran. From Iran it accepted, and onwards it shifted and transmitted the same to India, including our Kashmir also. Therefore, the history of Silk Road left behind multiple influences, and one is really wonderstruck to see at certain places in Central Asia that there are certain specimens of art and craft which bear the influences, Gandharan influence on the one hand, Egyptian influence on the other hand, Zoroastrian influence on the other hand, Persian influence on the other hand. So many influences, they are couched in one house and in one room, and one can therefore understand the contribution of Silk Route in fostering and forging what we called as the multiculturalism, or what we called as the cultural bilateralism. So with these few words on Central Asia, we are hopeful that we are going to carry forward these series of lectures on Central Asia in the next lectures, and we will be debating on other dimensions of Central Asia, like geostrategy, like it is a relationship with the neighboring world, and many other type of the topics and the themes that we will be very likely debating during those lectures. So with that, I am thankful to the viewers.